I was sitting in the passenger seat of my son Derek's work truck. It is one of those big, heavy-duty work trucks that sits just a little too high off the ground. We had just finished picking up some heavy lumber for a raised garden bed I was building in the backyard, and my shirt was sticking to my back from the Tennessee humidity. When we pulled back into my driveway, I unbuckled my seat belt, opened the heavy passenger door, and went to slide out like I had done 1,000 times before. And for the first time in my life, my legs did not catch me the way they were supposed to. There was this sudden, terrifying split second of nothingness. A hesitation in my thighs. My right knee buckled just a fraction of an inch under my own weight, and I had to grab the door handle so hard my knuckles turned white just to keep from dropping straight down to the concrete. Derek looked over the steering wheel and asked if I was all right. I waved it off immediately. I blamed it on sitting too long in the cab, blamed it on the heat, blamed it on anything I could think of. But my chest was tight, and it was not from the weather. It was from the quiet realization that the physical foundation I had trusted for over 7 decades was starting to slip away from me. I spent over 30 years working as a supervisor in a logistics warehouse down by the rail yard. 30 years of standing on solid concrete, lifting heavy pallets, climbing metal stairs, and moving my body like it was a tool that would never wear out. When you work logistics, you do not think about your joints. You think about getting the trucks loaded on time. When I finally retired, I genuinely believed my body would just keep obeying me the same way it always had. It did not obey. I started noticing things I did not want to admit to anyone. My legs were getting thinner. The wooden stairs going up to our second floor suddenly demanded more effort. My wife Linda noticed it before I did. She always notices the quiet things. She saw me looking for the handrail before stepping off the curb at the grocery store. She saw me pausing at the bottom of our staircase, just taking a deep breath before starting the climb. She never made a big deal out of it, but one evening she just set her hand on my arm and said I was moving careful lately. I hated hearing it, but she was right. And then I read a medical paper that my doctor slid across his desk during a routine physical. It was tracking men in their 60s and 70s over a 10-year period. The numbers on that paper stopped me cold. It showed that men like me could lose nearly 30% of the muscle power in our legs in a single decade if we did not actively give the body a reason to keep it. Not just the size of the muscle, but the actual power to stop a fall, to catch our balance, to push up from a low chair. 30% of my independence just quietly vanishing while I was busy thinking I was doing fine. That paper was the wake-up call I desperately needed. I stopped accepting that getting weaker was just the tax we pay for getting older. I started paying close attention to my own body. I started asking hard questions. And I started listening to people who understood how the body actually moves. Over the next couple of years, I discovered 4 specific things about keeping your legs strong and reliable after 60. 4 habits that completely rebuilt the way I move today at 73. I'm going to walk you through all 4 of these right now. I need you to stick with me through this, and I want you to pay very close attention to the 4th one. It is a specific orthopedic concept my daughter Megan explained to me. It is a completely different way to support the knee and the thigh without grinding your joints down, and it was the absolute missing piece for me. But you have to understand the first 3 everyday habits before that 4th concept makes any sense at all. I'm not a physical therapist, and I do not have medical letters after my name. I am just a man from Knoxville who spent his life working hard and realized his legs were giving out on him before he was ready to sit down. Over the last few years, I have seen dozens of good, proud men in my neighborhood end up trapped in their living room recliners simply because they did not know what was happening to their own legs. They ignored the weakness because of pride, just like I almost did. I refuse to let that happen to me. And I do not want you to go down that road either. The first thing I had to learn the hard way was a hard truth about walking. For years, Linda and I would go for a nice 2-mile walk around the neighborhood every single morning. I figured that was my leg work. I honestly thought that as long as I was putting miles on my shoes, my legs would stay strong. But here is what nobody tells you about walking when you get older. Walking is a straight line, low resistance movement. It is absolutely wonderful for your heart, it clears your head, and it gets your blood moving. But walking does not build the shock absorbers around your knees. When you walk, your body is mostly using momentum. You are basically just falling forward and catching yourself over and over again on flat ground. You are not forcing those big muscles in your thighs to generate new explosive power. I read a university study that tracked over 200 seniors who only used walking as their physical activity for a whole year. At the end of the year, their heart health was great, but they had still lost almost 4% of their fast twitch muscle fibers in their legs. Those are the specific fibers that snap into action to stop you from falling when you trip on a rug. I saw this happen firsthand to my buddy Tom from the hardware store. Tom walked 10 miles a day for 40 years carrying a heavy mail bag. When he retired, he kept right on walking. But one afternoon, he tripped on a green garden hose in his front yard, and his legs simply did not have the power to catch his weight. He went down hard, broke his collarbone, and he lost his confidence for a very long time. Walking is good, but it is not a shield. That leads straight into the second thing I discovered. And this one is a habit you probably did 3 or 4 times today without even thinking about it. It is the way we sit down. Think about how you sit in a chair or on the edge of your bed right now. If you are like I was, you walk up to the chair, you bend your knees slightly, and then at the very last second, you just let gravity take over and you drop into the seat. We do it because our knees ache and we want to save them from the effort of lowering our weight slowly. We think we are protecting ourselves. But my daughter Megan, who works as an occupational therapist, explained the mechanics of this to me, and it made my stomach sink. Every time you drop heavily into a chair, you are robbing your leg muscles of the most important work they can possibly do. You are completely skipping the negative resistance. When you lower your body slowly, controlling the weight all the way down until your hips touch the cushion, you are forcing the muscles in your thighs and hips to act like brakes. If you stop using the brakes, your body stops maintaining them. I read about a clinical observation involving roughly 60 older adults over 6 months. The ones who were instructed to simply control their descent into chairs improved their lower body stability by nearly 20% compared to those who just dropped down. My neighbor Arthur used to drop into his heavy wooden porch chair so hard the whole deck would shake. We would be having iced tea and he would just collapse into the seat. He thought his knees were just shot from years of working construction. When I finally convinced him to start fighting gravity on the way down, using the armrest to lower himself an inch at a second, he hated it. It took him a solid month of trying, but he finally stopped dreading getting back up. The way you sit down decides how easily you stand back up. The third thing is something that completely threw me off, because it has nothing to do with your thighs at all. It is your ankles. When my legs started feeling weak on the stairs, I thought it was just my knees getting old and the cartilage wearing thin. But my son Derek has a lot of older guys working on his heating and air crews. He told me he can always tell when one of his guys is going to have knee trouble just by looking at their heavy work boots. It is ankle stiffness. When we get older, the joints in our feet and ankles get incredibly stiff from lack of stretching. We lose the ability to bend the ankle deeply. So when you try to stand up from a chair or walk down a flight of wooden stairs, your ankle refuses to bend forward. And because the ankle will not bend, the knee has to take all the twisting and all the heavy pressure. Your knee becomes the main shock absorber for a stiff ankle, and the knee is simply not built to handle that. I found a rehabilitation paper looking at about 150 seniors dealing with knee pain. They spent 12 weeks just working on stretching their calves and improving ankle flexibility. More than 60% of them reported a massive decrease in knee discomfort when using stairs. They did not even touch the knees. They just fixed the foundation. Derek had a guy on his crew named Mike, about my age, who could barely get down on the concrete floor to inspect a basement furnace anymore. He was talking about retiring early just because he could not squat. Mike started putting his foot up on a cinder block in the shop and just leaning his weight forward over his toe to stretch that stiff ankle every morning. 3 months later, the pressure in his knees had backed off enough that he could squat down to read a gauge without wincing. If your legs feel weak and your knees hurt, you have to look down at the joints closest to the floor. Now we are at the fourth thing. This is the one I asked you to wait for. This is the specific orthopedic concept that completely changed the game for me. Up until I learned this, I honestly thought the only way to get stronger legs was to do deep, heavy squats or drive to a gym and push heavy metal plates on a machine. And at my age, my joints are absolutely not interested in doing that kind of work anymore. I thought I was simply out of options. But Megan sat me down at our kitchen table and explained a concept called isometric tension. It sounds like a complicated medical term, but it is actually the simplest, most effective way I have found to support my leg strength without grinding my joints to dust. Most of us think muscle is only built by moving weight up and down, but Megan explained that the muscle fibers around your knee and your hip respond incredibly well to heavy tension without any movement at all. Imagine holding a heavy bag of soil from the garden center in front of you. Your arms are not moving up or down, but your muscles are working furiously to keep that bag from dropping. You can do the exact same thing for your legs. I looked into the sports medicine behind this, and there was a trial with about 80 older adults with severe joint degradation. They had them do static holds against a wall, creating tension with zero joint movement for just 8 weeks. Their functional thigh strength increased by 25% with zero added joint pain. I started doing this right in my garage. I would stand with my back flat against the drywall, slide down just a few inches until my thighs engaged, and I would simply hold that position for 30 seconds. No bouncing up and down. No deep bending that hurt my knees, just holding the tension until my legs felt warm. My friend Robert from our church, a tall guy who had completely given up on strengthening his legs because of his severe arthritis, thought I was making it up. He told me his doctor said bone on bone meant game over. I challenged him to just try pushing his foot hard against the solid leg of his heavy dining table for 10 seconds at a time while he was sitting down reading the paper. Just creating tension without bending the knee at all. A few weeks later, he pulled me aside after Sunday service and told me he had walked up the front church steps without grabbing the handrail for the first time in a year. The secret nobody tells us is that you do not need movement to build the armor around your joints. You just need controlled tension. When I finally put all of this together, everything changed for me. I stopped treating my legs like they were fragile glass and started treating them like they were hungry for the right kind of work. I stopped dropping heavily into my chairs. I started stretching my stiff ankles against the front tires of my truck in the driveway before I went anywhere. I spent a few minutes every other day holding those static wall sits in the garage, just letting the muscle burn a little bit while my joints stayed perfectly safe and quiet. The weakness in my legs did not disappear overnight. It took patience. It took showing up consistently. But a few months after I started doing this, I was playing in the backyard with my young grandson, Leo. He threw a baseball deep into the bushes, and I crouched down low to fish it out of the dirt. When I grabbed the ball, I pushed myself back up to a standing position. I did not need to grab the wooden fence post to help myself up. I did not hesitate. My legs just drove me straight up. The power was there. The stability was there. The quiet confidence in my own body had finally come back. That terrifying split second of nothingness I felt in Derek's truck all those years ago was completely gone. Muscle does not just vanish overnight because we happen to turn a certain age. It slowly fades away when we stop giving it a specific reason to stick around. And the beautiful thing I have learned is that it is incredibly eager to come back if you just send it the right signals. You do not need an expensive gym membership. You do not need heavy metal weights. You just need to pay attention to how you sit down, how your ankles move, and how to create tension without causing pain. The independence we all want to keep. The ability to go where we want, when we want, without asking anyone for help. It all begins right there in your legs. If the legs go, the freedom goes right along with them. Do not wait until standing up feels like a major life event. Tomorrow morning, when you sit down to drink your coffee, do not just drop into the kitchen chair. Control the weight. Fight gravity for just 2 seconds on the way down. See how it feels to use those brakes again. Start right there. I will be right here on the porch, waiting to talk to you again soon.